The laptop hit the cabin floor with a sickening crack. Gasps rippled through first class as the screen shattered fragments glinting under the soft cabin light. "Oops," Veronica sneered, her smile razor sharp. "Maybe you should be more careful with your things." Jasmine Carter froze, pulse pounding, staring at the ruined device that held her billion-dollar acquisition. Around her, no one moved, only silent judgment, polite avoidance. Veronica turned away, certain she'd reminded an unworthy passenger of her place. She didn't know the truth yet that the woman she'd just humiliated wasn't beneath her. She was above everyone on that plane, the new owner of the airline itself. Jasmine Carter had always been exceptional, though the world seemed determined not to notice. At 32, the brilliant Harvard MBA graduate had already climbed higher in the aviation industry than anyone with her background was supposed to, growing up in Harlem with a single mother who scrubbed office buildings and hotel rooms at night. Jasmine learned early that she would need to work twice as hard to get half as far her mother, Denise Carter, had sacrificed everything to provide opportunities for her daughter. "Education is the one thing they can't take from you," she would say, exhaustion lining her face as she helped Jasmine with homework. After returning from her third job of the day, those words became Jasmine's mantra through high school, where she graduated as valedictorian, despite counselors suggesting she set more realistic goals. Harvard came next, though not without battle scars. Jasmine secured a full scholarship through academic excellence. But the Ivy League campus proved to be another arena of subtle and not so subtle prejudice. White classmates questioned if she was really qualified or just an affirmative action case. Professors sometimes mistook her for janitorial staff when she arrived early. To Class 1, economics professor had even called her articulate with surprise in his voice after her first-class presentation, as if eloquence from a black woman was some rare astronomical event. But Jasmine persisted. She graduated summa cum laude with job offers from top consulting firms flooding her inbox. She chose aviation because it fascinated her. The complex logistics, the global connectivity, the promise of bringing people together. Across boundaries within 8 years, she had developed a reputation as the industry's miracle worker. The executive who could transform struggling airlines into profitable enterprises. Her latest achievement had been conducted in near total secrecy, after months of careful negotiation and strategic planning. Jasmine was on the verge of becoming the youngest black female CEO in aviation history. Skyline Airlines, a prestigious carrier with a problematic history of discrimination complaints, was about to become hers through a brilliant acquisition strategy that even the most seasoned Wall Street analysts hadn't seen coming. Today's flight was no coincidence. Jasmine had deliberately booked herself on Skyline's flagship route to experience their service firsthand. Before the acquisition announcement, her laptop contained the final presentation for tomorrow's board meeting, along with the signed contracts that would make the deal official instead of her usual executive attire. The armor of tailored suits she wore to white male-dominated boardrooms. She had dressed casually in designer jeans and a simple blouse. "Let me see how they treat regular passengers." She had told her executive assistant Sydney, "especially those who look like me." From the moment she arrived at the terminal, the answer had been clear. The ticket agent had checked her first-class boarding pass 3 times, asking if perhaps she was at the wrong gate. The security officer had pulled her aside for a random screening while white businessmen sailed through the priority lane. And when boarding began, the gate agent had stopped her again. "First class is boarding now, ma'am. You'll need to wait for your group." "I am in first class," Jasmine had replied. Calmly extending her boarding pass, the look of surprise on the agent's face had been just the first of many as she settled into her plush window seat in the first-class cabin. Jasmine observed how the white passengers were greeted by name, offered drinks immediately, and treated with deferential smiles. When the flight attendant finally acknowledged her, it was with a curt, "You need something," rather than the warm, "How may I assist you, sir?" directed at the white businessman across the aisle. The anxiety and pressure Jasmine felt wasn't about flying. It was about what tomorrow would bring after this acquisition. She wouldn't just be breaking a glass ceiling. She'd be responsible for transforming a corporate culture that clearly needed an overhaul. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "When you get to the top, make sure you send the elevator back down." Jasmine opened her laptop, the screen illuminating with spreadsheets and the finalized acquisition documents. Tomorrow, everything would change not just for her, but for every person who had ever been judged by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. She just needed to get through this flight. First flight attendant Veronica Peterson had worked for Skyline Airlines for 20 years, and she had certain beliefs about how things should be. Chief among them was knowing who belonged where, when she spotted Jasmine Carter sitting in first class during her pre-flight cabin check. Something about the image simply didn't compute in her mind. Veronica was a tall woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. She prided herself on upholding traditional values and had often complained to colleagues about how the airline's obsession with diversity was lowering their standards in her 2 decades of service. She had developed a keen sense for who the real first-class passengers were, and in her mind, they didn't look like Jasmine Carter as the pre-flight service began. Veronica lavished attention on the white passengers in the cabin. She memorized their names, complimented their ties or watches, and made recommendations from the premium drink menu. But when she reached Jasmine's row, her demeanor changed entirely. "Anything to drink?" she asked curtly, not making eye contact. "Sparkling water with lime, please." Jasmine replied. Veronica moved on without acknowledging the request, returning moments later with drinks for everyone except Jasmine, when Jasmine politely raised her hand to remind the flight attendant about her order. Veronica pretended not to notice. It took 3 attempts before Jasmine finally received her water without the requested lime. "Excuse me," Jasmine said quietly. "I asked for lime with my water." Veronica's smile tightened. "We're out of lime, you should have ordered earlier." Jasmine glanced at the white businessman across the aisle, whose gin and tonic was garnished with a fresh lime wedge. She said nothing. Turning back to her laptop, where she was reviewing the final acquisition numbers, the screen displayed confidential information about Skyline's financial health data that even most of the company's executives weren't privy to as boarding completed and the cabin prepared for departure. Veronica's thinly veiled hostility continued. She stopped by Jasmine's seat again this time with a suspicious glare. "How did you get this seat?" she asked, her voice just low enough that other passengers couldn't quite hear. Jasmine looked up, momentarily confused. "Excuse me? This seat first class, these seats are expensive." Veronica's implication was clear. "I'm aware of the cost." Jasmine replied calmly, "I purchased it like everyone else." Veronica's eyebrows raised skeptically with what these upgrades are usually for our frequent business travelers. The white businessman across the aisle, Wallace Thompson, according to Veronica's earlier friendly greeting, had been listening with increasing discomfort. He shifted in his seat, accidentally knocking his elbow against his drink. The glass wobbled and spilled, sending ice and liquid across his tray table. Veronica rushed to his side immediately. "Oh my goodness, Mr. Thompson. Let me clean that up right away. I'm so sorry about that. Let me get you a fresh drink immediately." She fussed over him, offering premium napkins and a replacement drink with double the alcohol on the house as she cleaned his area. Some of the liquid dripped over the divider and onto Jasmine's open laptop bag. "On the floor, your bag is leaking onto my side." Veronica snapped at Jasmine as if she had caused the spill. "Actually, the spill from his drink is dripping onto my property," Jasmine corrected, reaching down to move her. "Bag, don't use that tone with me," Veronica hissed. "You're being disruptive." Jasmine straightened in her seat. "I'm not being disruptive. I'm protecting my property from damage, and I'd appreciate the same courtesy you're extending to other passengers." Something in Veronica snapped. Her face flushed red, and before Jasmine could react, Veronica's hand shot out, knocking Jasmine's open laptop directly off the tray table. It crashed to the floor with a sickening crack, the screen fragmenting on impact. "Oops," Veronica said, not bothering to disguise her satisfaction. "You should be more careful with your things." The cabin fell silent. Jasmine stared at her laptop, containing the only copies of some critical acquisition documents now lying damaged on the floor of the aircraft. The screen flickered, displaying fragmented pieces of spreadsheets and contracts. Before going black, "You deliberately knocked over my computer," Jasmine said, her voice steady. despite the rage and panic building inside her. She reached for her phone and began recording. "Put that away," Veronica demanded. "Recording crew members is against airline policy around them." Other passengers had varying reactions. Some looked away, pretending not to notice. Others watched with uncomfortable expressions. A few had already taken out their phones, sensing that something significant was unfolding. One middle-aged white woman across the aisle whispered audibly to her husband, "That flight attendant is completely out of line." A younger passenger, 2 rows back, called out, "Hey, I saw that you knocked her laptop down on purpose." Veronica's eye face hardened as she realized she was being watched and judged. "This passenger is being disruptive and interfering with cabin service." She announced loudly, "I'm going to have to ask the captain to intervene." As Veronica stormed toward the cockpit, Jasmine carefully picked up her damaged laptop, her hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from controlled fury. 24 hours from now, she would own this airline, but right now, she was just another black woman being humiliated for daring to occupy a space someone like Veronica didn't think she deserved. Captain James Sullivan's heavy footsteps announced his arrival in the first-class cabin. A tall man with greying temples and the confident bearing of someone rarely questioned. He surveyed the scene with practiced authority. His gaze shifted between Veronica, his colleague of 15 years, and Jasmine, immediately making calculations about who deserved his trust. "What seems to be the problem here?" He asked, his question directed at Veronica rather than at Jasmine. "This passenger has been disruptive throughout boarding." Veronica explained, her voice taking on a professional tone that contrasted sharply with her earlier hostility. "She's been demanding special treatment, arguing with the crew, and now she's recording us without consent." Captain Sullivan turned to Jasmine with an expression that made it clear he'd already made his judgment. "Ma'am, interfering with the flight crew is a federal offense. I'm going to have to ask you to cease this behavior immediately, or we'll be forced to remove you from the aircraft." Jasmine took a deep breath. "Captain, with all due respect, I've done nothing wrong. Your flight attendant deliberately knocked my laptop to the floor, damaging it and potentially destroying important business data. I began recording only after this incident occurred." "She's lying," Veronica interjected. "She's been difficult since she boarded the laptop fell, because she had it precariously balanced." Captain Sullivan's eyes flickered to Jasmine's damaged computer regardless of how it happened. "I need to ensure this flight departs safely, and on time. Do we have an understanding that there will be no further disruptions? The only disruption has been the treatment I've received." Jasmine insisted, her voice leveled, despite her rising frustration. "This laptop contains critical business documents that I need for a meeting tomorrow. The damage was deliberate, and I'd like it formally acknowledged." Sullivan's patience was visibly thinning. "Ma'am, we can file a report after we land. If you wish to make a formal complaint right now, I need your assurance that you'll comply with crew instructions for the remainder of the flight, or I will have security escort you off this aircraft." As Jasmine opened her mouth to respond, she noticed another flight attendant, this one, a young man with an apologetic expression, discreetly picking up her phone from the seat where she had placed it. He slipped it into his pocket, with a subtle shake of his head, warning her not to mention it. The theft of her evidence hit Jasmine like a physical blow. Without the recording, it would be her word against Veronica's. A scenario that history had taught her rarely ended favorably for people who looked like her. A soft voice came from behind. "I have it on video." Jasmine turned to see a middle-aged Asian woman holding up her phone. "I recorded what happened. She definitely knocked your laptop down on purpose." Veronica's face flushed with anger. Passengers are not permitted to record crew members without permission. "I was recording my first-class experience to show my kids," the woman replied calmly. "I happened to capture the incident. Would you like me to send this to customer service now, or after we land?" The captain's expression shifted slightly as he realized there might be objective evidence contradicting his colleague's version of events. "That won't be necessary at this time, ma'am. We'll sort this out properly after we reach our destination." Jasmine made a quick decision. Creating a scene might feel momentarily satisfying, but it wouldn't serve her. Larger goals tomorrow. She would have the power to address this systemic problem from the top down. For now, strategic patience was her best option. "I understand, Captain. I'd like to continue my journey without further incident." Sullivan nodded clearly, relieved to avoid escalation. "Very well. We'll be taking off shortly." As the captain returned to the cockpit, and Veronica moved to the galley with a triumphant glance back at Jasmine. The Asian passenger discreetly passed her a business card, Lin Chen, corporate attorney. "I've already sent the video to my cloud storage. Text me if you need it." Jasmine nodded gratefully and reached for her phone, before remembering it had been taken. She signaled to the young male flight attendant who had confiscated it. "I need to make a quick call before takeoff," she explained. "I'm sorry about what happened," he whispered, returning her phone. "I'm Tyler. If you need anything during the flight, ask for me directly." Jasmine quickly dialed her executive assistant, Sydney. "We have a situation. The contracts on my laptop may be compromised. I need you to." The phone was plucked from her hand by Veronica, who had returned without warning. All electronic devices must be turned off for departure. She announced, loudly ending the call, before handing the phone back with a smug smile. The aircraft began pushing back from the gate. Jasmine stared out the window, her mind racing through contingency plans. This wasn't the first time she had faced discrimination, and she knew it wouldn't be the last throughout her life and career. She had encountered countless Veronica's people who took one look at her skin color and decided she didn't belong in spaces they considered exclusively theirs, as the engines roared to life. Jasmine thought about her mother, who had taught her to transform adversity into opportunity when they push you down. Denise Carter always said, "Don't just get back up, build yourself a ladder." Zoom. The broken laptop sat in her bag, a painful reminder of how easily others could dismiss her humanity. But Jasmine had long ago learned that true power wasn't about reacting. It was about responding strategically. By this time tomorrow, she would transform this airline from the inside out. The thought brought a small, determined smile to her face as the plane lifted into the sky. What would you have done in Jasmine's position? Comment number 1, if you think she should have demanded to be let off the plane, or number 2, if her strategic patience was the right move. Don't forget to like this video if you're outraged by how she was treated, and subscribe to see what happens next in this incredible story of justice and comeuppance. Will Jasmine's damaged laptop mean losing her billion-dollar deal? Or does she have another card to play? Let's find out what happens when discrimination meets its match in the next part of our story. 30. Jury 00FT above the Earth. Tensions in the first-class cabin of Skyline Airlines. Flight 372 continued to simmer. Jasmine sat quietly in her window seat, trying to recover what data she could from her damaged laptop. Occasionally, the screen would flicker to life, revealing fragments of the acquisition documents before fading again to blackness. Veronica had made it her mission to ensure Jasmine's flight remained uncomfortable. When the beverage service came around again, she accidentally skipped Jasmine's row when the meal service began. Everyone received their first choice of entree, except Jasmine, who was told her selection had run out when she requested a blanket for the increasingly chilly cabin. She was informed none were available, despite the white passenger beside her being offered 1 minute later. 3 rows ahead, a group of 4 white men in expensive suits were receiving royal treatment. Veronica laughed loudly at their jokes, kept their glasses filled with premium scotch, and checked on their comfort every few minutes. Their boisterous conversation carried throughout the cabin, making it impossible for other passengers to rest or work. "Did you see the stock price this morning?" one of them asked the others, his voice carrying clearly to where Jasmine sat. "Something's definitely happening with Skyline." "Merger rumors," another replied confidently. "My buddy at Goldman says there's a buyer circling." Jasmine kept her expression neutral. Though her interest was piqued, these men were clearly industry insiders, possibly even Skyline executives. "God, I hope it's not another diversity stunt." The first man continued, "Remember when United put that woman on their board and the stock tanked for a quarter affirmative action at 30? The 00FT laughed, the third man, causing the others to chuckle. I'll tell you one thing, said the fourth, lowering his voice slightly but still audible to Jasmine. If some diversity hire tries to run this airline, I'm taking my business elsewhere. Some things should stay traditional. You know what I mean? Veronica approached their row with fresh drinks, gentlemen. I couldn't help overhearing my boyfriend works in Skyline's executive offices. And there are definitely some changes coming between us. I think you're right to be concerned about the direction things might take. Jasmine's eyebrows raised slightly at this unprofessional disclosure. She made a mental note of the flight attendant's badge number, visible whenever she turned in profile, attempting to focus on salvaging her data. Jasmine tried connecting to the in-flight Wi-Fi. If she could upload even parts of the contract to her secure cloud, she might be able to reconstruct the most critical elements. But after entering her credit card information and attempting to connect, an error message appeared: service unavailable for this seat. Jasmine glanced around the cabin and noticed other passengers using the Wi-Fi without issue when she pressed the call button to ask about the problem. Veronica appeared with an insincere smile. Having technical difficulties? She asked sweetly. The Wi-Fi isn't working at my seat. Jasmine explained. Oh, that's strange. Must be a technical issue. Nothing I can do about that, Veronica replied with exaggerated helplessness. Perhaps you can try again later. Much later, as Veronica walked away, the young male flight attendant, Tyler, approached with a bottle of water as he placed it on Jasmine's tray. He slipped her a folded napkin. Just checking if you need anything else, he said at normal volume, before lowering his voice to add, she manually blocked your seat number from the Wi-Fi system. It's a feature meant for unruly passengers. Jasmine unfolded the napkin to find a handwritten note. Crew Wi-Fi Skyline staff password. Blue Horizon 25, use my login Williams. Sorry about this. Thank you, Jasmine whispered. Why are you helping me? Tyler's eyes darted to make sure Veronica wasn't watching. I've seen how she treats certain passengers. It's not right. And it's not what this company should stand for. As he moved away, Jasmine quickly connected to the crew's private network. Using Tyler's credentials, she had only a few minutes before someone might notice the unauthorized access working quickly. She composed an encrypted message to her executive team. Laptop damaged, proceed with Plan B, activate media protocol. Sierra document, everything on Flight 372 first class, confirm acquisition, still proceeding regardless. She hit send just as a shadow fell across her screen. Veronica stood there, her face contorted with fury. What do you think you're doing? She demanded. You're using crew Wi-Fi. That's a security violation. Jasmine closed her laptop calmly. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to salvage my damaged property. Don't play innocent with me? Veronica hissed. Tyler, get over here now. Tyler approached cautiously, his face pale. Did you give this passenger access to our secure network? Veronica demanded before Tyler could respond. Jasmine intervened. He did nothing wrong. If there's been a security breach, perhaps you should check who's been accessing passenger information improperly or manually. Overriding system protocols for personal vendettas. Veronica's face flushed crimson. You have no idea who you're messing with. I've worked for this airline for 20 years. I have friends in corporate. One word from me, and your complaint goes straight into the trash. And one word from me, Jasmine replied quietly, might matter more than you think. Is there a problem here? The question came from one of the suited men who had moved to stand beside Veronica. His silver tie clip bore the Skyline Airlines logo. An executive. Then Mr. Davidson, Veronica said. Her demeanor instantly transforming to professional deference, this passenger has been causing problems. Throughout the flight, she's now accessing restricted crew systems. Davidson looked Jasmine over with barely concealed disdain. Ma'am, I'm Robert Davidson, Vice President of Operations for Skyline. I can assure you that any attempt to breach our systems will result in serious consequences, and I'm sure unauthorized blocking of customer services based on racial bias would result in equally serious consequences. Mr. Davidson, Jasmine responded coolly. Davidson's eyebrows shot up. I beg your pardon? That's a serious accusation, one that the evidence supports, Jasmine replied. Along with numerous other incidents on this flight alone, you should control your tone. Davidson warned you have no idea who you're speaking to. Funny, Jasmine said with a slight smile. I was thinking the same thing. The confrontation had drawn the attention of the entire first-class cabin. The other executives had risen from their seats and gathered around, creating an intimidating semicircle of white men in expensive suits surrounding. Jasmine, listen, said another of the men. We're trying to have a pleasant flight here if you can't behave appropriately in first class. Perhaps you should consider flying coach next time. The microaggressions were becoming increasingly overt. But Jasmine remained composed, documenting every comment and face for future reference. I have every right to be here, she stated firmly, and every right to be treated with the same respect as any other passenger. Some passengers earn respect, sneered another of the men. Some just play the race card when they don't get special treatment. Tyler, who had been standing silently by, suddenly spoke up. Sir, that comment is inappropriate and violates our company's code of conduct. Veronica rounded on him. You are way out of line. Williams, consider yourself reported. I'll make sure you never work another premium cabin again. What's going on here? A new voice entered the fray as a plain-clad air marshal approached from the back of the aircraft, alerted by the growing disturbance. These passengers are harassing this woman, Tyler said quickly. This woman has been disruptive throughout the flight, Veronica countered, and this flight attendant has been enabling her behavior. The air marshal surveyed the scene. 4 white male executives, a senior white female flight attendant, and a young black woman seated alone. His gaze lingered on Jasmine, making assumptions that were written clearly across his face. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to return to your seat and remain there for the duration of the flight, he said to Jasmine, despite the fact that she was already seated while everyone else was standing. I haven't left my seat. Jasmine pointed out calmly, I'm not the one creating a disturbance. The air marshal's hand moved subtly toward his hip, a gesture not lost on Jasmine. The threat was clear: comply or face physical enforcement. Everyone please return to your seats. He announced, we'll sort this out upon landing. As the group dispersed, Veronica leaned down close to Jasmine's ear. You're finished, she whispered. When we land, you'll be met by security. Enjoy trying to explain your way out of this one. Sir, Tyler caught Jasmine's eye as he moved back toward the galley, giving her a small nod of solidarity. At least one person on this flight understood what was really happening. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen as Flight 372 began its initial descent. The cabin crew prepared for landing. Jasmine stared out the window at the city lights emerging through scattered clouds. Below her mind, racing with contingency plans, the confrontation had escalated beyond what she had anticipated, but in some ways, it had also provided clarity. The airline's culture problem wasn't just about one prejudiced flight attendant, it reached all the way to the executive level. Jasmine's damaged laptop occasionally flickered to life, revealing fragments of the acquisition documents that would change everything tomorrow, or were supposed to. Anyway, she worried briefly about whether the damage might somehow jeopardize the deal, but reminded herself that the contracts had already been signed and submitted. The presentation was a formality, important, but not legally necessary. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our descent and should be landing in approximately 20 minutes at this time. All electronic devices must be turned off and stowed. Flight attendants prepare the cabin for arrival. Jasmine powered down her laptop and carefully placed it in her bag. As she did, she noticed a text message from Sydney. Her executive assistant had somehow come through, despite the airplane mode urgent call. The moment you land, team mobilized media on standby. A small smile played at the corners of Jasmine's lips. Sydney was terrifyingly efficient. One text from the plane, and she had likely already put all contingency protocols in motion. The smile faded quickly as the intercom sounded again. Attention passengers. This is Captain Sullivan. We've been advised that security personnel will be meeting our aircraft upon arrival. All passengers are requested to remain seated until security has completed their eye duties. We apologize for any inconvenience from across the aisle. Veronica shot Jasmine a triumphant look. The message was clear. She believed Jasmine would be removed from the aircraft in handcuffs. Jasmine closed her eyes, thinking back to a similar moment years ago in a Harvard classroom. A professor had openly questioned whether she belonged in his advanced finance seminar, suggesting that certain students might find the material too challenging that day. Her mentor, Professor Christine Winters, the only black female faculty member in the department, had witnessed the exchange. Never let them see you sweat. Professor Winters had advised her afterward, when they expect you to defend your right to be somewhere, change the game. Make them defend why they belong in your presence. The memory strengthened Jasmine's resolve as the plane descended through 10:00 FT. She began mentally preparing for what would happen upon landing. Unlike most passengers in her situation, she had resources and connections that Veronica couldn't begin to imagine around her. The air felt charged with anticipation. The executive several rows ahead was speaking in hushed, urgent tones, occasionally glancing back at her. The air marshal maintained a watchful eye from his position at the rear of the first-class cabin. Tyler moved efficiently through his landing preparations, his face a mask of professional neutrality that slipped only when he passed Jasmine's row and gave her the briefest nod of encouragement during the brief period when the plane's communication systems connected with the ground network during descent. Jasmine's phone vibrated with a cascade of incoming messages. She glimpsed a few before stowing the device from Sydney legal team, waiting at gate PR statement ready from Lin Chen, the passenger who had recorded the incident video secured and sent to email. You provided from Alexis Washington. Jasmine's lead counsel. Everything in place, proceed as planned. The pieces were falling into order. Jasmine had spent her entire career preparing for moments like this. Moments when someone underestimated her, thinking her powerless when she was anything but the landing gear deployed with a mechanical thunk that reverberated through the cabin outside the window. The airport approached rapidly, a constellation of runways and taxiways illuminated against the darkening sky. Final approach. The captain announced cabin crew seats for landing as the plane touched down with a slight bump in the thrust. Reversers engaged with a roar. Veronica made her way to Jasmine's seat under the guise of a final compliance check. I hope you've enjoyed your flight, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Security is very efficient at this airport. They'll have you processed in no time. I'm sure they are, Jasmine replied calmly, and I'm sure everyone will be exactly where they need to be very soon. Veronica's eyes narrowed at the cryptic response. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Jasmine said, leaning forward slightly, that actions have consequences even for people who think they're untouchable. Before Veronica could respond, the aircraft came to a complete stop at the gate. The seatbelt sign dinged off, but the captain immediately reminded everyone to remain seated. Ladies and gentlemen, as previously announced, security personnel will be boarding the aircraft. Momentarily, please remain in your seats until this process is complete. Passengers murmured with curiosity and concern. Being held on an arrived aircraft was unusual and inconvenient. Veronica straightened her uniform and moved toward the front of the cabin, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. Enjoy explaining your behavior to airport security, she whispered as she passed. Jasmine remained seated, her posture relaxed but alert. This was the moment everything would change. She had faced discrimination before, in classrooms, in boardrooms, in public spaces where people like Veronica felt emboldened to challenge her very presence. But never before had she been in a position to address it so comprehensively. To turn the tables so completely, the aircraft door opened with a hydraulic hiss. Veronica stood ready to greet the security team she expected would remove the problematic passenger. Instead, 3 people in impeccable business attire stepped into the cabin. The first was a tall black woman with close-cropped silver hair. Alexis Washington, Jasmine's chief counsel. The second was a younger South Asian man with glasses and a tablet computer. Raj Patel, her chief technology officer. The third was Sydney, Chen, Jasmine's executive assistant, her expression professional, but with a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. Captain Sullivan. Alexis announced in a commanding voice that carried throughout the cabin. We need to speak with you and your crew immediately regarding an incident that occurred on this flight. Veronica's triumphant expression faltered as she realized these weren't airport security officers, excuse me. But who are you? How did you get clearance to board this aircraft? Sydney stepped forward, her tablet displaying official credentials. "We have full clearance from Skyline Airlines, corporate headquarters. This is a matter of utmost urgency." The aircraft door opened wider as additional people boarded 2 uniformed airport police officers and a woman in a Skyline Airlines executive uniform. The confusion on Veronica's face deepened into alarm from her seat. Jasmine gathered her belongings and stood up as she walked toward the front of the cabin. The expressions on the faces of Veronica, Captain Sullivan, and the group of executive passengers transformed from confusion to dawning horror. Jasmine stopped directly in front of Veronica. "I think," she said quietly, so that only the flight attendant could hear. "There's been a misunderstanding about who I am." The atmosphere in the first-class cabin crystallized into perfect stillness as Jasmine Carter stood facing Veronica Peterson behind Jasmine. The doorway was filled with her executive team and legal counsel. Behind Veronica, Captain Sullivan had emerged from the cockpit, his face a mask of confusion. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Who authorized boarding?" Before passengers have deplaned, Alexis Washington stepped forward, her 6-foot frame commanding immediate attention. "Captain Sullivan, I'm Alexis Washington, Chief Legal Officer for Carter Global Ventures. We're here regarding a serious incident involving discrimination against our CEO." "Your CEO, Veronica," repeated her voice suddenly thin. Her eyes darted to Jasmine, then back to Alexis as the implications began to sink in. The woman in the Skyline executive uniform moved to the front of the group. "Captain Sullivan, I'm Patricia, Montgomery Chief Operating Officer of Skyline Airlines. This boarding has been authorized at the highest level." The revelation sent ripples of whispers through the cabin. The 4 executives who had been drinking and making racist comments earlier were now standing, their faces drained of color. Miss Carter Patricia continued addressing Jasmine with obvious difference on behalf of Skyline Airlines. "I want to express our profound apologies for the treatment you experienced today." Jasmine nodded but remained focused on Veronica, whose face had transformed from smugness to shock to fear in the span of seconds. "Miss Peterson," Jasmine said calmly, "I believe you owe me my phone recording of our earlier interaction." Veronica's hand trembled as she reached into her pocket and withdrew Jasmine's phone. "I don't understand," she stammered. "You're with Skyline Corporate." "Not exactly," Sydney interjected. Stepping forward with a tablet, she tapped the screen and a news headline appeared, which she turned for all to see. "Breaking Carter Global acquires Skyline Airlines in surprise takeover." The timestamp showed it had been published 5 minutes ago, effective as of market close today. Jasmine explained, her voice clear and carrying throughout the now silent cabin. "I am the majority owner and incoming Chief Executive Officer of Skyline Airlines." The 4 executives who had been making racist comments earlier audibly gasped. One of them, Robert Davidson, the Vice President of Operations, stepped forward, his face ashen. "Ms. Carter." He began, his tone completely transformed from his earlier condescension. "There seems to have been a terrible misunderstanding." "There certainly has," Jasmine agreed, "though I'm not sure misunderstanding accurately describes deliberate discrimination, Mr. Davidson. Or should I reference your earlier comment about diversity hires and how some things should stay traditional?" Davidson's mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. Captain Sullivan, struggling to process the dramatic shift in power dynamics, attempted to regain control of the situation. "Ms. Carter, while I deeply regret any unprofessional behavior that may have occurred, I'm sure we can address these concerns through proper channels, rather than creating a scene that distresses other passengers." "Creating a scene," Jasmine Moe repeated, raising an eyebrow, like announcing that security would remove a passenger who had done nothing wrong, or allowing your crew to deliberately damage valuable property or standing by, while executives of your airline made openly racist remarks. Tyler Williams, who had been quietly observing from the galley, stepped forward. "Miss Carter is telling the truth. Captain, I witnessed the entire incident, including Veronica, deliberately." Knocking Miss Carter's laptop to the floor, Veronica turned on him furiously. "You little traitor. You have no idea what you're doing to your career right now, actually." Jasmine interjected, "Mr. Williams has just demonstrated exactly the kind of integrity this airline will value moving forward." She turned to Tyler with a nod of appreciation. "Thank you for standing up for what's right, even when it was difficult." The cabin erupted in a buzz of conversations as passengers realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Phone cameras were recording from every angle. Lin Chen, the passenger who had recorded the initial incident, stood up. "I have the whole thing on video from the moment the flight attendant knocked down your laptop deliberately to the racist comments made by these executives." The recording had already been uploaded to Jasmine's secure server, but the public acknowledgement caused several of the Skyline executives to visibly pale. Raj Patel, Jasmine's chief technology officer, stepped forward with her damaged laptop in his hands. "We've recovered the data, Miss Carter. The acquisition presentation is intact." Jasmine nodded her thanks, then addressed the entire cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay in your deplaning. What you've witnessed today is unfortunately not an isolated incident, but rather a symptom of a culture that has been allowed to fester at this airline as the new owner and CEO of Skyline. I want to assure you that meaningful change begins today." She turned to Patricia Montgomery. "Ms. Montgomery, please ensure that all passengers on this flight receive vouchers for future travel as compensation for the delay. And please arrange for Mr. Williams to be escorted to our executive lounge. I believe he and I have much to discuss about the future of this airline." Patricia nodded briskly. Of course, Miss Carter Veronica, who had been standing frozen in horror, finally found her voice. "You can't just... You don't understand. I've given 20 years to this company, and in those 20 years..." Jasmine replied quietly, "How many passengers have you treated the way you treated me today? How many people have felt unwelcome or unworthy? Because of your prejudice, every interaction matters. Miss Peterson, every person deserves dignity." News crews had gathered at the terminal windows, alerted by the breaking story of the acquisition. The scene playing out in the first-class cabin would soon be headline news across the country. Captain Sullivan, recognizing the gravity of the situation, addressed Jasmine directly. "Mrs. Carter, as captain of this aircraft, I take full responsibility for the conduct of my crew and the safety and comfort of all passengers. I failed in that duty today, and I deeply apologize." Jasmine studied him for a moment. "Accountability begins with acknowledgement. Captain Sullivan will discuss your future with the airline after a full review of this incident." As passengers began to deplane, many stopped to offer Jasmine words of support or apology for not speaking up. Sooner, the four executives tried to slip away unnoticed, but Sydney stopped them with a raised hand. "Gentlemen, Ms. Carter would like to see all of you in the Skyline Executive Lounge immediately. Your comments during the flight require addressing." Davidson attempted to object. "I have a connecting flight which has already been rebooked for tomorrow." Sydney finished for him. "This meeting is non-negotiable." As the cabin emptied, Jasmine found herself face to face with Veronica. One final time, the flight attendant's earlier arrogance had collapsed into desperate pleading. "Please, you don't understand. I have bills. A mortgage. I can't lose this job. Perhaps you should have considered that before deciding I didn't deserve basic human dignity." Jasmine replied, "Actions have consequences. Miss Peterson, today you're experiencing yours. What would you have done if you were in Jasmine's position when the truth was revealed? Comment number 1, if you would have fired Veronica on the spot, or number 2, if you would have used this as a teaching opportunity for the entire company. Don't forget to like this video. If you felt satisfied seeing justice served, and subscribe to see what happens next as we discover the fallout from this incredible confrontation. Will the executives face consequences for their racist remarks? How will Jasmine transform the airline's toxic culture? Let's continue this powerful story. The Skyline Airlines Executive Lounge had never been so tense, normally a sanctuary of privilege where the company's highest-ranking officers relaxed. Between flights, it had transformed into an impromptu tribunal. At the head of the conference table sat Jasmine Carter, her damaged laptop placed prominently before her. To her right was Alexis, Washington Chief Counsel, and to her left sat Raj Patel, who had connected the laptop to the room's large display screens. Facing them across the polished mahogany were the 4 Skyline executives from the flight, including Robert Davidson, Vice President of Operations, Captain Sullivan sat rigidly at one end, his captain's hat placed neatly beside him. Veronica Peterson had been seated at the opposite end, isolated and clearly uncomfortable in these rarefied surroundings where she had never been invited before. "Gentlemen, Miss Peterson, Captain Sullivan." Jasmine began, her voice measured and calm. "I want to thank you for joining this emergency session of what is now my board of directors." Davidson cleared his throat nervously. "Miss Carter, while we appreciate the urgency you feel, I must point out that proper protocols for board meetings include Mr. Davidson." Alexis interrupted the acquisition document signed yesterday. "Give Miss Carter controlling interest in Skyline Airlines, effective as of 4 Ceruala this afternoon. This meeting is being conducted entirely within her authority as majority shareholder and incoming CEO." Davidson fell silent, his face flushing. Jasmine continued, "I had planned to experience Skyline service as an ordinary passenger before introducing myself to the company leadership tomorrow. What I experienced instead was an object lesson in why this acquisition was necessary in the first place." She nodded to Raj, who tapped his tablet, the screen behind them filled with a PowerPoint slide titled "Discrimination Complaints Against Skyline Airlines 2020-2025. A graph showed a steady increase year over year with categories broken down by race, gender, disability, and religion. This data wasn't public. Another executive objected, "How did you access these internal reports?" "Due diligence." Jasmine replied simply, "What concerns me isn't just the number of complaints, it's how they were handled." Sir Raj advanced to the next slide, showing that of 732 discrimination complaints filed in the past 5 years, only 6 had resulted in any disciplinary action. That's because most complaints are without merit. Davidson interjected, "People play the race card when they don't get upgraded or when we enforce standard policies." Jasmine's gaze locked onto Davidson, the race card. "Mr. Davidson, is that similar to your comment on the flight about diversity hires not belonging in airline leadership?" The room fell silent as Raj played a crystal-clear audio recording of the executives' conversation from the flight, captured by Jasmine's phone before it was confiscated. Their voices filled the room, making derogatory comments about diversity, affirmative action, and how certain people didn't belong in first class or corporate leadership. When the recording ended, Davidson stared at the table. Those comments were private conversations, not official company positions. "Culture starts at the top." "Mr. Davidson," Jasmine replied, "when executives speak that way, even privately, it sets the tone for the entire organization." She turned to Veronica, who had been silent throughout the meeting. "Mrs. Peterson, you mentioned on the flight that your boyfriend works in Skyline's executive offices. Could you clarify that relationship for us?" Veronica shifted uncomfortably. "Bradley Thompson is the Director of Crew Relations. Mr. Thompson, who has dismissed 78% of discrimination complaints without investigation," Alexis asked. Referring to her notes, "He follows company policy." Veronica defended a policy designed to protect people like you while ignoring the experiences of people like me. Jasmine observed. She turned back to the executives. "Gentlemen, this isn't just about one incident or one flight attendant. This is about a systemic failure of leadership." Her damaged laptop flickered on the table, still showing fragments of the acquisition presentation she had prepared. "I came to this airline prepared to implement gradual changes to work within the existing leadership structure while slowly shifting the culture. What I experienced today has convinced me that a more comprehensive approach is necessary." Patricia Montgomery, the COO, who had met them at the plane, entered the lounge accompanied by Tyler Williams, the flight attendant who had helped Jasmine Ms. Carter. Patricia said, "The press is gathering in the main terminal. They're requesting a statement about both the acquisition and the incident on the flight. They'll have one shortly." Jasmine assured her. She gestured for Tyler to take a seat at the table, much to the surprise of the executives. "And Veronica, why is he here?" Veronica demanded. "He's just a flight attendant. Mr. Williams demonstrated something today that seems rare at Skyline Airlines' moral courage." Jasmine replied, "He risked his position to do what was right, despite intimidation." She turned to Tyler. which is why I'd like to offer you a new position as our Director of Customer Experience Reporting. Directly to me, Tyler's eyes widened in shock. Miss Carter, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Jasmine smiled. We need people who understand that respect isn't reserved for certain passengers based on their appearance. Davidson scoffed. You can't seriously be promoting a junior flight attendant to director level. He has no qualifications. His qualifications were demonstrated today. Mr. Davidson, Jasmine, cut him off something. Yours were as well, though with very different results. She stood commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Here's what happens next. I am implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Effective immediately, every complaint will be thoroughly investigated by an independent third party. Mandatory bias training begins next week for all staff, starting with this room's occupants. She turned to each executive. In turn, gentlemen, you have a choice to make. You can submit your resignations by 9 tomorrow morning, or you can commit to the new direction of this company, understanding that your past behavior and comments will be factors in your performance reviews. Moving forward, the executives exchanged nervous glances, their former arrogance replaced by uncertainty. Mrs. Peterson Jasmine continued, Your employment with Skyline Airlines is terminated effective. Immediately, your boyfriend's position will be under review as well, given the clear conflict of interest and pattern of dismissed complaints. Veronica gasped, You can't do that. The union will. The union has already been provided with the video evidence of your actions. Alexis interjected. They've indicated they will not contest a termination for cause. In this case, tears welled in Veronica's eyes. But they were tears of anger rather than remorse. This isn't fair. I've given 20 years to this airline. And in those 20 years, Jasmine replied evenly, How many passengers left their interactions with you feeling diminished, unwelcome, or humiliated? Service isn't just about following procedures, Miss Peterson. It's about treating every person with dignity. Jasmine turned finally to Captain Sullivan. Captain, you failed in your duty today. Not just as a pilot responsible for passenger safety, but as a leader who sets the tone for your crew. Sullivan nodded solemnly. I understand, Miss Carter. I accept full responsibility, which is why Jasmine continued. You're being reassigned to our training division, where you'll help implement new protocols for handling discrimination complaints. I believe people can learn and grow. Captain Sullivan, I hope you'll prove me right. The captain's relief was visible. Thank you for the opportunity. I won't let you down. Jasmine collected her damaged laptop and nodded to Raj. Please ensure this is preserved, exactly as it is. It will be displayed in our headquarters lobby as a reminder of why our cultural transformation matters. As the meeting concluded, the executives filed out their futures. Uncertain, Veronica was escorted to HR to process her termination. Still protesting the unfairness of it all, Captain Sullivan left to begin drafting new training procedures. His captain's hat clutched tightly in his hands. Only Tyler remained, still processing his unexpected promotion. Miss Carter, he said hesitantly. Why me? You don't even know me. Jasmine smiled. I know that when faced with a choice between what was easy and what was right, you chose right. That's surprisingly rare, Mr. Williams, and exactly the quality we need to build a better airline. Patricia Montgomery returned to the lounge, Ms. Carter. The press is waiting, and your mother has called 3 times. Jasmine laughed. Tell them I'll be right there, and get my mother on the phone. She'll want to hear about this day directly from me, as Tyler and Patricia left to prepare for the press conference. Jasmine took a moment alone in the executive lounge. The weight of the day settled on her shoulders. The discrimination, the confrontation, the revelation, and now the responsibility of transforming an entire corporate culture on the table before her. Lay her damaged laptop screen, cracked but still occasionally flickering to life, a perfect metaphor for what she had experienced and what lay ahead. Systems could be broken and still function. People could face cracks and still shine. Companies could confront their flaws and emerge stronger. Jasmine gathered her strength and headed for the door. A press conference awaited, And beyond that, the challenge of building an airline where everyone could fly with dignity. The day had lasted a lifetime as twilight settled over the city. Jasmine Carter finally found herself alone in what was now her executive office at Skyline Airlines headquarters. The corner suite offered panoramic views of the airport, where Skyline planes taxied against the darkening sky, their logos illuminated like beacons. The press conference had gone better than expected. Media outlets had swarmed the story part. Business coup, part social justice victory. Hashtags about the incident were already trending nationally. Corporate PR specialists would have advised managing the story differently, minimizing the discrimination angle to protect the company's stock price. But Jasmine had been deliberately transparent, describing exactly what had happened and announcing immediate changes to the airlines. Culture accountability isn't bad for business. She had told the reporters it's essential for growth. Now, in the quiet of her new office, Jasmine finally allowed herself to feel the emotional weight of the day. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her phone and dialed the most important number in her contacts. Baby girl, her mother's voice was warm and excited. I've been watching everything on the news. My daughter owns an airline. Despite her exhaustion, Jasmine smiled. Hi, Mum. It's been quite a day. I heard what happened on that plane. Denise Carter continued her tone, shifting from proud to protective. That flight attendant had no idea who she was messing with. It wasn't just about me, Mom, Jasmine replied, gazing out at the planes below. It's about everyone who's ever been made to feel they don't belong somewhere because of how they look. There was a knowing pause on the line. Your father would have been so proud today. The mention of her father brought unexpected tears to Jasmine's eyes. Charles Carter had died when she was just 15, working double shifts to help pay for her advanced placement exam fees. He had never seen her graduate from Harvard, never witnessed her meteoric rise through the corporate world, never known she would one day run an airline. I was thinking about him today, Jasmine admitted, about all the times he told me not to let anyone define my worth for me. That man knew what he was talking about. Denise agreed. Remember when your elementary school teacher said you shouldn't bother applying for that gifted program? Jasmine laughed softly, and Dad went to the school board meeting, in his work uniform covered in paint, and quoted educational statistics until they changed their minds. He always said, they might not see you coming, but they'll sure remember you were there. The conversation with her mother continued, grounding Jasmine, as it always had. They spoke about practical matters. Yes, Jasmine would still come for Sunday dinner. No, she didn't need her mother to come stay with her during the transition. Yes, she was eating properly despite the stress. After hanging up, Jasmine walked to her desk, where her damaged laptop sat like a battle trophy. The screen flickered occasionally, images of spreadsheets and contracts appearing like ghosts, before fading again to blackness. Such a small thing to have triggered such monumental changes. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see an older black man in a tailored suit standing in the doorway. I heard my protégé had an eventful day, Dr. William Freeman said with a smile. Jasmine crossed the room quickly to embrace her mentor. Dr. Freeman had been her economics professor at Harvard, and later the first investor in her management consultancy. His guidance had helped shape her career at every critical juncture. William, I didn't know you were in town and missed this moment. He gestured around the office when you told me you were acquiring Skyline. I booked my flight immediately, though I must say, your method of announcing the acquisition was more dramatic than I anticipated. Jasmine shook her head. That wasn't exactly planned. They settled into the seating area near the window, and Jasmine recounted the day's events in detail. Dr. Freeman listened intently, his expression darkening, as she described the discrimination she had faced. You know, he said, when she finished, when I became the first black department chair at Harvard, a colleague told me I should feel grateful for the opportunity, as if excellence should come with a side of gratitude. When it comes from people who look like us, did it get easier? Jasmine asked, being the first or the only one in the room. Dr. Freeman considered the question not easier. Different, the burden shifts first. You worry about proving yourself, then you worry about proving it wasn't a fluke. Eventually, you realize your real responsibility is to ensure you're not the last. Jasmine nodded. Understanding deeply. I've been thinking about that all day. This isn't just about one incident or even one airline. It's about changing expectations about who belongs in which spaces, and that Dr. Freeman said approvingly is why you'll succeed. Where others have failed. You see, beyond the personal to the systemic, their conversation was interrupted by Sydney, who entered with a tablet in hand. Sorry to disturb you, but you're receiving an overwhelming number of media requests. Everyone from CNN to The Root wants an exclusive on both the acquisition and the incident. Jasmine exchanged a glance with Dr. Freeman. What do you think? How public should I make this? That depends. He replied thoughtfully, Are you more interested in personal vindication or systemic change? Systemic change. Jasmine answered without hesitation. Then tell the story completely, but keep the focus on the culture, not the individuals. Make it about transformation, not punishment. Sydney made notes as Jasmine outlined her approach to the media requests when she finished. Sydney hesitated before adding, There's one more thing. Veronica Peterson is requesting a private meeting with you before she leaves. She says she wants to apologize. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Does she, or does she want to save her job? Probably the latter, Sydney admitted, but I thought you should know. After Sydney departed, Jasmine paced the office, conflicted. What would you do? She asked her mentor. The question isn't what I would do. Dr. Freeman replied, It's what kind of leader you want to be. Forgiveness and accountability aren't mutually exclusive. Before Jasmine could respond, another knock came at the door. Tyler Williams, still in his flight attendant uniform, but now wearing a temporary executive badge, entered hesitantly. Miss Carter, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought you might want to see this. He handed her his phone, displaying social media reactions to the day's events. Thousands of people were sharing stories of discrimination they had experienced on Skyline flights, but more surprisingly, hundreds of Skyline employees were joining the conversation, many expressing relief that the company's culture might finally change. It's not just passengers. Tyler explained, Many of us have been uncomfortable with how things were handled for years. There's a group of employees gathering in the staff break room right now, talking about your press conference. I think they'd appreciate hearing from you directly. Jasmine looked at Dr. Freeman, who nodded encouragingly. Go, this is where leadership happens. Not just in boardrooms, but in break rooms. Tyler led her through the corporate headquarters to the employee area where flight crews prepared for trips or rested between flights. When Jasmine entered the room, fell silent. Dozens of employees in various uniforms, pilots, flight attendants, ground crew stared at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to apprehension to hope. A young black female flight attendant in the back spoke first. Is it true what they're saying about what happened on the flight today? Jasmine nodded. Yes, and about the changes that are coming. Some people are saying jobs will be cut. A middle-aged pilot interjected that this is just an excuse for downsizing. No jobs will be cut because of this cultural transformation. Jasmine assured them this isn't about punishment. It's about building an airline where every employee and every passenger is treated with dignity as she spoke with the staff. Answering questions and listening to their concerns, Jasmine realized this might be the most important meeting of the day. The executives could be replaced if necessary. The policies could be rewritten, but the culture would only change if the people who interacted with passengers every day believed in the transformation. The young black flight attendant approached her as the impromptu meeting concluded. Miss Carter, I just wanted to say I was on that flight today in economy. I saw what happened. Jasmine studied the young woman's face. You were working the main cabin. She nodded. Yes, and I've seen Veronica do similar things before, but no one ever calls her out because she's protected. Seeing you stand up to her, it meant something to me. It meant maybe things really can change. As Jasmine returned to her office, the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. This wasn't just a business acquisition anymore. It was a promise to thousands of employees and millions of passengers that excellence and equity could coexist. Her damaged laptop still sat on the desk, a reminder of how the day had begun. She touched the cracked screen, gently thinking of all the obstacles she had overcome to reach this moment. The discrimination hadn't started today on that plane, and it wouldn't end with Veronica's termination. But for the first time, Jasmine felt she had the power to address it. At its roots, tomorrow would bring new challenges: resistant board members, nervous shareholders, skeptical employees. But tonight, in the quiet of her new office, Jasmine Carter allowed herself to feel both the burden and the possibility of being the change she had always hoped to see. 6 months had passed since the day Jasmine Carter's laptop had been deliberately knocked to the floor of Skyline Airlines Flight 372. 6 months of intensive work, challenging conversations and fundamental changes that had transformed not just one company, but sent ripples throughout the entire industry. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Skyline's headquarters, illuminating the lobby where Jasmine stood, addressing a gathering of employees, media representatives, and industry leaders behind her. Encased in glass like a museum piece sat her damaged laptop, preserved exactly as it had been that day. Screen cracked, but still occasionally flickering to life. 6 months ago, Jasmine began this laptop, became a symbol of something broken in our industry today. It stands as a reminder that broken doesn't mean destroyed, that damage can lead to transformation, that what matters isn't the cracks we sustain, but the light that shines through them. The audience applauded as Jasmine unveiled the plaque beneath the display case. Change takes flight, the beginning of a journey toward equity. The changes at Skyline Airlines had been swift and comprehensive. Within weeks of the incident, Jasmine had implemented industry-leading anti-discrimination policies and training programs. The executive team had been restructured, with some of the original leaders choosing to resign rather than adapt to the new culture. In their place stood a diverse group of talented professionals who shared Jasmine's vision for an airline where excellence and equity went hand in, and Tyler Williams, now formally installed as Director of Customer Experience, had proven himself more than equal to the challenge. His first-hand knowledge of the passenger experience combined with his natural empathy had resulted in policy changes that improved service for everyone, while eliminating the biases that had previously gone unchallenged under Ms. Carter's leadership. Tyler told a reporter from Aviation Weekly, "We've seen customer satisfaction scores increase by 27%. It turns out that when you treat all passengers with respect, everyone has a better experience." Captain Sullivan, reassigned to the training division, had surprised everyone with his commitment to change after facing his own biases. Head-on, he had developed a comprehensive program for pilots and crew on recognizing and addressing discrimination in real time. His willingness to acknowledge his failures had made him an unexpected but effective advocate for the cultural transformation. The business results spoke for themselves, despite predictions from industry skeptics that Jasmine's social justice agenda would hurt the bottom line. Skyline had become the most profitable airline in the country. Passenger numbers were up, employee turnover was down, and the stock price had nearly doubled. As the ceremony concluded, Jasmine mingled with the guests. Among them were several passengers from Flight 372 who had been invited to witness the airline's transformation. Firsthand, Lin Chen, the attorney who had recorded the original incident, shook Jasmine's hand warmly. "You've created something remarkable here," she said. "My family used to avoid flying Skyline because of their reputation. Now we exclusively book with you." Nearby, a group of flight attendants chatted with industry representatives about Skyline's new scholarship program for underprivileged youth interested in aviation careers. The initiative, fully funded from the company's profits, had already awarded 20 full scholarships to students who would otherwise never have considered careers in the industry as the event wound down. Sydney approached with an update on the day's schedule. "Everything's ready for the commemorative flight," she reported. "Full passenger list. Special crew media coverage arranged." Jasmine nodded. "Perfect. And the other matter?" "We discussed." Sydney smiled knowingly. "He's waiting in the executive lounge as requested." An hour later, Jasmine boarded Skyline Flight 1972, the flight number chosen to honor the year the first black female pilot had been hired by a major US airline. This special commemorative flight, marking 6 months since the incident that had changed everything, was staffed entirely by minority crew members, many of whom had been promoted or hired under Jasmine's leadership, unlike 6 months ago when she had flown incognito today. Jasmine boarded openly as CEO. The difference in treatment was stark, not because of her title, but because every passenger was receiving the same respectful, attentive service, regardless of their appearance or status. As she settled into her seat, Jasmine reflected on how far they had come. Veronica Peterson had indeed requested that meeting 6 months ago, though her apology had been more about saving her job than acknowledging her actions. Jasmine had listened patiently before explaining that while forgiveness was possible, consequences remained necessary. Veronica now worked an entry-level position at a competing airline where, according to industry gossip, she complained bitterly about reverse discrimination to anyone who would listen. The most surprising development awaited Jasmine in the first-class cabin seated across the aisle. Looking distinctly uncomfortable was Robert Davidson, the former vice president who had made those offensive comments about diversity hires 6 months earlier. Mr. Davidson, Jasmine acknowledged as she took her seat. "I admit, I'm surprised you accepted my invitation." Davidson's face flushed. "I almost didn't," he admitted, "but my daughter convinced me I should hear what you have to say. She's quite a fan of yours, actually." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? She's 17, wants to be a pilot after everything that happened. She made me reevaluate some things." He hesitated before adding, "I owe you an apology, Miss Carter. What I said that day, there's no excuse for it." "You're right, there isn't." Jasmine agreed, but there is a path forward. As the flight reached cruising altitude, Jasmine explained why she had invited Davidson. "I'm launching a new executive training program focused on inclusive leadership. I need someone who understands the old culture to help identify blind spots in the new one." Davidson looked genuinely shocked. "You're offering me a job after what I said?" "I'm offering you a chance to be part of the solution." Jasmine clarified, "Whether you take it depends on whether you've truly learned from your mistakes." Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement from the captain. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat today. Our CEO, Jasmine Carter, will be joining me in the cockpit for a portion of our journey." A ripple of surprise and excitement went through the cabin. Few passengers knew that during the past 6 months, while transforming the airline, Jasmine had also been secretly completing her private pilot certification, a childhood dream she had previously set aside for her business career. As she made her way to the cockpit, Jasmine passed a young black girl, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, watching her with wide-eyed admiration. She stopped briefly. "Do you like airplanes?" she asked the child. The girl nodded enthusiastically. "I want to fly them someday." Jasmine smiled. "What's your name, Maya?" The girl replied. "Well, Maya, remember this. The sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning." In the cockpit, Jasmine took the controls under the captain's supervision as the massive aircraft responded to her touch. She thought about her journey from the Harlem apartment, where her mother had taught her to dream beyond her circumstances, to Harvard, where she had proven her brilliance despite constant doubts, to this moment, literally and figuratively taking control of her destiny. The incident 6 months ago could have been just another indignity to endure, another example of discrimination to process privately while maintaining a professional facade. Instead, it had become a catalyst for transformation, not just for Jasmine personally, but for thousands of employees and millions of passengers who would never again have to question whether they belonged after returning to her seat for landing. Jasmine gazed out the window as the aircraft descended toward the runway. She thought about her father, who had always believed she could soar, about her mother, who had taught her to transform obstacles into opportunities, about Professor Freeman, who had shown her that leadership wasn't just about breaking glass ceilings, but installing revolving doors in their place. The wheels touched down smoothly, bringing to close not just a flight, but a chapter in Jasmine's journey. As passengers prepared to deplane, many stopped to thank her for the changes she had implemented, sharing stories of how the airline's transformation had impacted their own experiences. The last to approach was Maya, the young girl who dreamed of flying. She handed Jasmine a carefully folded paper airplane. "My mum told me what happened to you on that other plane," she said solemnly. She said, "You made it, so people like us can fly without being afraid." Jasmine accepted the paper airplane with a smile. "That's exactly right, Maya. And someday, maybe you'll be the one flying the real planes." The child beamed. "I will, and no one will tell me I don't belong there." "No," Jasmine agreed, watching as Maya rejoined her mother. "No one will." As she walked through the terminal, paper airplane in hand, Jasmine thought about how a single moment of discrimination had catalyzed a movement for change. One flight attendant's prejudice had unexpectedly led to an industry-wide transformation. One broken laptop had become a symbol of resilience and progress. The changes at Skyline Airlines were just the beginning. Other carriers had begun implementing similar policies. Recognizing that diversity and inclusion weren't just moral imperatives, but business advantages. Industry conferences now featured sessions on equitable service and inclusive corporate cultures. Many of them led by Skyline's new executive team. As Jasmine reached the exit, she glanced back at the arrivals board, where dozens of Skyline flights were listed, each one carrying passengers who would experience service based on respect rather than prejudice. Each one staffed by employees who felt valued for their work rather than judged by their appearance. Miss Carter Sidney appeared at her side. "Your mother's on the phone. She wants to know if you're still coming for Sunday dinner." Jasmine smiled. "Some things never changed, no matter how high you flew." "Tell her I wouldn't miss it," she replied carefully, tucking Mia's paper airplane into her briefcase alongside the documents for tomorrow's board meeting. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to create change. But today, Jasmine Carter had proven that justice could indeed take flight, reaching heights that transform not just one person's experience, but an entire industry's future. Jasmine Carter's story teaches us that real change often begins with a single moment of injustice. Confronted with dignity and strategy when faced with discrimination, she chose neither passive acceptance nor impulsive reaction, but strategic patience. Understanding that lasting change requires systematic approach rather than emotional response. The story reminds us that prejudice thrives in environments where it goes unchallenged. Tyler's courage to stand up against injustice, despite potential personal cost, demonstrates how individual actions can catalyze institutional transformation. Meanwhile, Veronica's downfall illustrates that privilege without accountability eventually collapses. Perhaps most importantly, the narrative shows that diversity isn't just a moral imperative, but a business advantage under Jasmine's leadership. Treating all passengers with respect improved satisfaction across the board. Her success proves that equity and excellence aren't competing values. They're complementary strengths. The broken laptop, transforming from a symbol of discrimination to an emblem of progress, reminds us that our setbacks can become stepping stones when approached with resilience and vision. As Jasmine told young Maya, "The sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning." What moment in your life changed everything? Have you ever been underestimated based on your appearance only to prove someone wrong? Or have you witnessed discrimination and wondered whether to speak up? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone facing similar challenges today. If Jasmine's journey from discrimination to transformation resonated with you, hit that like button to help more people discover this powerful message. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of triumph over adversity that will inspire and empower you. And if you know someone struggling with discrimination or doubting their own potential, share this video as a reminder that justice can take flight in unexpected ways. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, like Jasmine, you have the power to transform obstacles into opportunities and create lasting change in your world. Until next time, keep soaring above expectations.